Hi everyone, it's Michael, and it is time for a quick update on my orchid flasks. Now, as I mentioned in the first video, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, and I'll link the video below where I deflask them and get them arranged in their current potting environment, but I do think it's time to transition them just a bit. Now, I made an accidentally very good choice by taking what I called the pick of the litter and potting it separately from the rest of the orchid flask. So I have one here and I have one here. What I didn't realize at the time of doing it was that I was creating a fabulous controllable. So before I decided to change anything within the container of all of the orchids, I demoed it first here. So at the 1 week mark, because I potted these on, December 11th, which means that these have now been in this environment for about 9 days. When I realized that they weren't doing really well, and I kind of figured that it was from not having proper nutrition, because the agar that they come in when they are in a flask provides that kind of nutrient solution. They didn't seem to be doing so well, so I wanted to make sure that the fertilizer solution wouldn't burn the roots. So what I did was I first introduced that fertilizer solution into these two containers, and I just watched to see what would happen. And oddly enough, these two perked right up. They processed the fertilizer solution really, really well. So it gave me a green light to go ahead and introduce fertilizer solution into the larger containers of all of the plants. Now, that being said, there is still some struggle going on, especially for the hybrid of the Epidendrum and Encyclia. It just does not seem to be liking the environment that I have it in now. However, the one that's potted individually seems to be doing just famously. It's still really lush, it's really green. So what that tells me is I really want to get these into an individual housing. So I'm going to take you in closer so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But before I do, I wanted to show you some things that I picked up and what I'm going to be transitioning them to. So I got these fabulous little planter trays, and so it's like a tray of 24 each. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pot up each of these. I have 2 trays here, and I'm just going to keep them separate for the sake of clarity. But what I'm going to do is, these have no drainage holes in the bottom, so I can actually go ahead and use this to flush my systems, the semi-hydroponic systems, but I can also use it to water in a semi-hydroponic way. I will do just a little reservoir of water at the bottom of nutrient solution that they can drink from. So that is the game plan. But beyond that, I still want to provide sustained humidity to the baby orchids. So I got this fabulous nano dome. Now, I had never seen anything like this before, but I'll take you in closer on it. It has these rotating mechanisms at the top that I can either close off airflow altogether or open it up. So I think this will be really, really great for me progressively acclimating these baby orchids into a less humid environment. And it has 2 of them on each container. So this is the system that I'm going to be transitioning them into. Here I have the Epidendrum Magnoliae and Encyclia Tampensis Alba hybrid. And you can see that the plant that was potted individually seems to be doing just fine. The roots seem to be doing just fine. There's a little bit of drying up at the tips of the plants, but it doesn't really concern me too much because it's perky and it seems generally happy. Now, when I take you into the container itself, you can see it's a bit of a different story. You can see that there seems to be a little bit more die-off in terms of the tips of the plants, and you can kind of see that the roots are really just starting to do that, which is not my favorite. So this is why I want to get them potted similarly to how I have this guy. So now let me go ahead and show you just the classic Encyclia Tampensis, and this one is just doing so beautifully. It's just happy and curly and beautiful. And the root system is just venturing all over the place, which is fabulous. And this entire flask just seems to be doing better. And so here's what I'm struggling with. As a first-time grower of an orchid flask, I just don't know. Maybe this one was just deflasked too early, and that's why they're struggling. But this one seems to be doing a lot better. The plants just seem generally a lot more lively. But in either scenario, I've seen that this system has been more effective, so I'm going to try to replicate that a little bit more for the rest of these guys. So now I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to set up the camera and do a time lapse, and I'm just going to get all of these repotted individually into these containers. All right, you guys, so the first step in this process is to measure out exactly where the water reservoir would be. Now, if I was doing this in a classic container, this step would consist of me placing the holes into the semi-hydroponic container. So where I've drilled this, I know that that's where the water reservoir will exist because otherwise it'll just spill right out. So I'm going to do generally the same principle, but I'm just going to measure and fill up to where the water reservoir would be with leca, so that way the roots aren't fully submerged. Now, given the depth of this tray, which is, let's find out, it's about 2.5 inches. I only ever want to fill this maybe with about a 1/2 inch in the bottom. So I'm going to lay a 1/2 inch reservoir of leca at the bottom so that the roots aren't initially submerged when I start to fill the tray with the nutrient solution. All right, you guys, I've gone ahead and potted up 32 of the seemingly most healthy little baby plants. Now, there were a ton more these plants that were so tiny that I just felt like they weren't going to quite make it if I potted them in this type of an environment. So that being said, I am going to leave them in the original potting concept, but you can see this is just, it's such a tiny little plant. I just don't know if it would make it in its own semi-hydroponic grow environment. So that being said, I'm going to allow these to just continue resting on the moist leca as they have been, and then if they gain some more size and momentum, I will transfer them to this grow system. But what I also value about this as a first-time practitioner of growing flasks is this will give me a really good reference point about what's more constructive, or at least in theory, that's how it would work. So now the last steps of this process, I'm going to fill directly some plain tap water into these empty trays here. That'll give me a really great visual indicator of exactly where the water levels are. I'm gonna drain it out by just lifting everything right up. And then when that's done, I'm going to fill to about maybe the 1 to 1.5 centimeter mark of nutrient solution so that they have a water reservoir to pull from. So I'm gonna place the dome on like so. And then I'm gonna go ahead and open up the ventilation holes to just create a little bit more airflow, but there'll still be sustained humidity. And then we'll see where things take us. I'm gonna repeat this entire process with the other orchid flask, but at least you'll have a concept of exactly what I'm doing. I will, of course, provide you with updates, so stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching and choosing to spend your time with me. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, guys.